Hey there, Together Learners. Eric back again. And what we do on this channel is made possible through the lens of what I do, which is a learning technologist, a learning futurist, being able to use technology to help get what's in my brain or what's going on in my projects and researches and put it into your brain. And so I thought maybe in this video we can talk a little bit about what that is. Educational technology, defining it, what's the role of a learning technologist, a learning futurist, and how that plays a role and how the future is coming to fruition through the changes and evolution of technology. So we're going to think about this course, technology in distance education and all that stuff before it. And if you're thinking about a career in educational technology, instructional design, learning futurism, this might be a little bit something to tell you this role of technology as we're moving forward, especially as it relates to this overlap between education and technology and what it means for defining educational technology. Coming right up. All right. Well, my name's Eric, and if you watch my videos on my other channel that is branded just in my name, Eric Hawkinson, you'll notice that I call myself a learning futurist. Now, that's not an educational technologist. It's slightly different, related. I'll make a whole different video, probably on that channel, about learning futurism. But I'd like to talk a little bit about educational technology, learning technology, and the role of a learning technologist, because that's what is driving me to make a lot of these contents for you on the web in general and in the courses I teach, right? So let's think about this relationship, right? Learning technologists take these two ideas, which is education and technology, and combine them. And what's probably easiest to think about when you think about a educational technologist is that there's a Venn diagram and they live in the overlap area between these two fields, these two concepts of education and technology. I think it's slightly more profound than that idea, and I'll try to explain as we go forward, right? So you take the activities of a person in education, teaching, learning, growing, becoming a better person, realizing your potential. There's a lot of things that are related to the concept, idea, the field of education. There's a lot of ways to define it. The same goes for a technologist, as technology is so broad, there's so many things happening with it, low tech, high tech, mid tech, new tech, emerging tech. I mean, technology is pretty much a way of life. We're living in an age of technology. So this overlap of these two things that are so broad can be so different. So it's probably almost impossible to say that any learning technologist, any educational technologist does a similar or the same job. They support the same things, really, using technology perhaps for educational purposes or learning from technology, et cetera, et cetera. But I think this is more of a reciprocal relationship rather than an overlapping sort of Venn diagram situation. I'll try to explain that further as we move along. Right, so first let's talk about education, right? One famous quote I pulled out for this one is, education and what survives that has been, what you have learned has been forgotten. I think of Yoda. I tried to almost talk like Yoda when that came out right there, because he's one of my heroes as far as a teacher of things, right? But this is relatively true. The idea of transferring knowledge is something we're learning more and more about in the learning sciences. And instructional technology has a systematic way to think about how we're going to teach people how to do things and how we're going to approach the design of learning systems and procedures, et cetera, et cetera. But after all that is said and done, what are we really learning? Right? What is the purpose for us to have a situation where we're trying to learn something? And usually that involves bettering ourselves, being better humans, being better prepared to take care of ourselves and the people around us, or engage in the world. And so that, again, is a very broad thing to think about. And so if you are a very learned person, if you're a highly educated person, you've probably forgotten, especially me, a lot of the books you've read, a lot of the lectures you've attended, but something survives, and those are the things that have been transferred to your everyday life. And this is a concept that often comes up in the design of learning, right? What are the things that are going to be transferred, taken away, put to use? And that is increasingly learning to be specific to different people and their role, their situation, and how they're going to take your knowledge, not necessarily your knowledge, but the knowledge put forward, and transfer it into something that's going to engage that person or better that person with their surroundings or the people around them, right? So that's one idea to think about of education, right? So let's try to tie that back to technology. So technology is anything that extends the body and mind. This is how I like to think about it. It's so broad. When we think about educational technology, a lot of people tend to jump to the latest in technology, right? An educational technologist does enjoy, if they're anything like me, studying the latest and greatest in technology. For example, right now, that might be artificial intelligence or augmented reality. But technology is anything. It's the carpets in your classroom. It's the chalkboard on the wall. It's the hearing aid for that student that can't hear so well. Technology is so much more, and it seeps into the learning process more ways than we often realize. And so often the technology intervention is not necessarily the high-tech one. It's the more accessible one. So technology has the ability to do new things, to do novel things, but it also has the ability to take what we can do and have done around teaching and learning and make it more accessible or more broad or more ubiquitous than ever before. And we're seeing that mainly, of course, right now through the use of internet technologies. Right, so we got these two ideas. So let's come back to this, right? Education and technology. So we've learned that education is the betterment of a person. Technology is the use of tools to extend a person's ability. So you see where I'm coming from, that I think this is a reciprocal relationship between these two. Being a person that understands education and pedagogy and the way that the brain seeps to understand things and how we can put that information to use is a powerful tool in bettering ourselves and humanity. And technology is put forth by the knowledge of humans, put into technology, and therefore that use, that scope, that reach of humans is stretched even further, and that comes back around to humans itself to then again stretch further, right? So these are two legs balancing the same thing. These are two pieces of the puzzle, and they are hopefully helping each other expand and exploit the goodness in each situation, right? So one last quote, and a couple of quotes to help us kind of put this all together and define educational technology. So the first one here is a fairly old one, just before I was born, actually, put out by UNESCO. It's defined as a systematic way of designing, carrying out, evaluating the total process of learning, teaching, in terms of specific objectives, employing combination of human technical resources to bring about more effective instruction. There's a lot going on in this particular definition. Yes, there's a lot of verbs in here as well. So you'll notice that there's designing, carrying out, evaluating, the total process of learning, right? This is telling in the way that educational technologists are usually involved in almost every stage of the learning process, from trying to decide what information is important or evaluating the environment from which that information is going to be processed. That could be a digital environment or a physical one. And then trying to figure out what technology or intervention might be best suited for that environment. Those and the information wanting to get across, and the type of learner or abilities or objectives that you want to get out from this learning process. And then coming back around in educational technology, there's famous processes called ADDIE and SAM, where you iterate on that process, you see what gets learned, you see how that information gets taken in and processed and put to use, and then you analyze it, you evaluate it, and you go back to step one and you keep moving forward. And this is very important in educational technology when I said like this back and forth between the education and technology purposes, because the technology is always evolving, and therefore it wraps around again, and then we can evolve the educational portion of that, and it goes around and around, and it never ends. And the new technology that comes out, we might test it, we might put it to use, but that technology evolves very quickly now. And so we have to keep moving forward, and that changes us, right? Another famous quote around technology is that humans create technology, and that technology creates humans, right? We're seeing that. You can see that in a lot of other videos on my YouTube channels where I talk about how technologies, especially things like virtual and augmented reality, are changing how humans communicate, think, grow, learn, work, etc., as these inventions come out. One more definition, official one. This is a little bit more modern. This is from an academic association. Technology is it's the study of an ethical practice facilitating learning, improving performance, using, creating, managing appropriate technological processes and resources. So the word managing is in here as well. More and more educational technologists are starting to have more C-level positions, C-suite positions. What I mean, you'll see things like chief metaverse officer or chief learning officer or chief experience designer in companies more often, because companies are having to create a culture, create systems in which all of their employees have a place to grow and learn and become better. And therefore the systems in the company have this, this effect where the technology, the systems that are happening in the company kind of reflect back in themselves in a virtuous cycle. So the management of information, of data being collected and processed and being reflected back into perhaps a new learning process or improved on old learning processes is becoming more common. Another thing that stands out in this particular thing is the ethical practice of facilitating and learning. So just because we can use technology, then again, there's appropriateness word in here as well. Just because we are able to use a specific technology doesn't mean that it's the most appropriate or ethical for any situation. I am a big fan of using things like virtual reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, but that is not appropriate in any means. And now as far as the ethical side of things, we have a situation where a person that has high digital literacy, high connectedness to the internet, and a person that has low digital literacy and almost no connection to the internet can have vastly different trajectories in how they grow and learn as a person, and therefore has bigger and bigger effects on their ability to have income, have a job, be successful in life. And so this is called the digital divide, and how we put technologies forward, how they get put to use, how they get arranged with systems of equity and equality are becoming more substantially important. And the ethical use of how we put, for example, technology into public educational systems, or have them available to the public and not have a paywall over the most important knowledge to be had, and things like open educational resources. These are all concepts that educational technologists, learning technologists are aware of, and they try, in most cases, to be sympathetic to and support. All right, I could go on and on about this particular idea, this topic, this trend of educational technology. It's what I devote my life to, and I'm so passionate about. Look for that other video about learning futurism, perhaps on my other channel. But for now, thank you for watching this video on defining educational technology. I hope to see you in the next video, everybody. Bye-bye.